has also done a book in the past year as a faculty member, putting out a book about food and nutrition, which is so cool and shows the diversity of books that are that Pressbooks can be made with. So she'll show you all about the project that she's worked on. But to get started, I want to show you a little bit about how Pressbooks works. But before we do that, I'll let Stephanie and Josie and maybe Debbie introduce themselves. So Stephanie, you can go for it.
Hi everyone, I'm Stephanie Green, a nutrition faculty over at Phoenix College, and I participated in the Maricopa Millions project and created a nutrition book for my entry-level nutrition course. So I have a lot to share with you guys from a faculty perspective about taking on a big project like that and using Pressbooks. Josie, take it away.
Hi everyone, I'm Josie Milliken, and I am a department head, member of the writing faculty, and associate instructional designer at Pima Community College over in Tucson, Arizona.
Good morning. My name is Debbie Baker. I'm an instructional designer with the Maricopa Center for Learning and Innovation. And I am really excited to be here and excited to have everybody on the line. Thank you so much for all of your work today on this presentation, Amy and Stephanie and Josie.
Of course. So to get started, it feels like I'm moderating the session, even though that was not the intention. So to start, I'll show you what it's like to use Pressbooks. Many of you, I'm sure, are already a part of the Maricopa Community Colleges system and will have access to Pressbooks. If you don't, we have a sandbox book ready for you to use after Stephanie and I give our presentations, so you can play around in it for a bit, ask us any questions you have. And yeah, we're on a little bit of a strict deadline, so I'll try to keep it to 15 to 20 minutes and try not to go over that. I tend to give these webinars once a month and they're about 90 minutes, so I'll try to make it nice and snappy. Okay, hang on. Sorry about that, 1 second. I haven't used WebEx before, so this is very confusing for me. Is everyone seeing my screen?
Yes.
Perfect. So, like I said, this is sort of the introduction to Pressbooks. I'll make it as condensed as possible, and you can ask me any questions that you have afterwards. So the perfect place to start, in my opinion, is what it looks like when you have a Pressbooks network. So in this case, for a lot of you, it'll be Maricopa. For those of you who are interested, you won't have a home network like this and don't have access to Pressbooks yet. If you're unsure, you can ask me or ask your institution whether or not they have a Pressbooks network. And if you're interested, you can always get in contact with me afterwards. So this is Rebus Press. This is our sister organization, and they do a lot of amazing work in the Pressbooks Pressbooks and the OER community. They do a lot of collaborative, open projects and publish really accessible, highly edited, beautiful texts every year. And down here, you will see a catalog. And at your institution, if you have a Pressbooks network, like I said, this is where all of the books from your institution's Pressbooks will come into. So when a book is done and it's published, I actually should just pull up the Maricopa Open Digital Press. I don't know why I didn't think of this. So this is Maricopa's institutional network, and at the bottom you can see all the books that have been published by the Maricopa community. There's 3 pages worth of books, which is an amazing thing to have. Everyone at Maricopa has access to these books, and everyone who comes across Maricopa's network also has access to these books. So it's a really great way to advertise, or not even advertise, but share the books that you have. There's a really great book I found on the Rebus community, but like I said, I probably should have found it on Maricopa Network. But this is one of my favorite books, so my eyes really went to this one. This is Introduction to Community Psychology. So Pressbooks at its core is a book formatting service that it's a publishing platform. It's an open and accessible publishing platform, which allows you to write on one platform and have your books beautifully formatted into different formats such as having your book online. So for example, this is a web book. Your book has a link that your students or anyone who wants to read your book can go to, and they will have access to this book. You can also have books available to be downloaded in many different formats. So the readable formats like EPUBs and PDFs and Mobi, as well as the adaptable formats, which is super important for OER, so that other people can adapt and remix and revise your book. So that means your book can be shared in XML and HTML files as well. So this is a web book. Here's a table of contents, and the metadata exists down here. So when you export this book into a PDF, all of this information will still exist, but in a beautifully compiled PDF format or an EPUB format. And then hopping into a chapter, we have, this is a great chapter called Oppression and Power, and I want to show you a little bit of what the typefaces look like. So you see the chapter title, the authors, there's text boxes, images, lots of really beautiful parts of this book. This is a particularly long chapter, but I wanted to show you because it is as comprehensive, but just as detailed as a traditional textbook. You have links that can be clicked so that you can navigate to different resources and different sections. They have a resources section down here, so there's a lot of different ways that you can use Pressbooks. There's navigational cues. So in this case, I'll take you to the top of the page. And this book has done something really cool where they have lecture slides and quizzes at the end of the book. So if I hop into a quiz, you can see that they've taken an interactive activity, so an H5P activity in this case, and have a quiz available that corresponds to the chapter. So there's a plethora of different avenues that you can take with your book, whether it's purely instructional, of that mimicking what you would identify as a traditional textbook, or something that's very interactive, and everything in between for all different subjects of all different languages, whether or not you're using math, or whether it's just an image book. There are so many different ways that you can go about making your Pressbooks book. Oh my goodness, time moves quickly. And okay. So with that being said, I wanted to show you what a completed book looks like so that you can have an idea of how to write it. So when you log into Pressbooks for the first time, in this case, you will see a blank page. I have a book that's loaded already because I am already a user on Pressbooks. So when you log in for the first time, you'll see a button that says create a new book. And upon getting there, you can click on here, and you will be led to this interface. So you can create a new book and incorporate your own information. You can have a webbook address. You can add your book title. And keep in mind that on Pressbooks, nothing is ever final. So you don't ever have to be bound to your book title. You can always change your book title. You can change any of your content, and when you click save, all the saves will automatically be reflected, let's say, in your PDF or your EPUB. There's no different changes that you have to make for your different formats. This is a really convenient part of Pressbooks, so there's no finalized publishing process. When you want your publication to be revised, that's on your own timeline, and when you want to see that happen. So that's a lot of flexibility that Pressbooks provides that a traditional published book doesn't provide. So in this case, I have already created my book. It's the Arizona OER 2021 Sandbox book. This is also the book that whoever doesn't have access to a Pressbook account will be working on. As you can see, Josie and I are already users on here. And hopping into a chapter, this is the editing, the authoring platform and the editing interface of Pressbooks. For those of you who don't know already, Pressbooks is, or if you can tell by the way the interface looks, Pressbooks is built on top of WordPress. So if you have familiarity with Pressbooks, this will look very, if you already have familiarity with WordPress, this will look very familiar to you. But if not, that's okay. There are a lot of visual cues and a lot of elements that look really similar to, let's say, Google Docs or Word, platforms I'm sure you are all familiar with. And we also have a Pressbooks user guide that helps you get started and have access to that information that you would need to get started on your book. So a couple of the things that I wanted to show you that are really interesting. We have headings, which are not that interesting, but they're laid out in sequential order. So for accessibility purposes, that's really important. There's different text boxes that you can add. So for example, there are color text boxes that you can use for visual cues, just like there was in the test book that I had shown you. Oh my goodness, sorry, there's the bar up top that's driving me crazy for WebEx. And there's other features. So for example, let's say that I want to say in Canada, it tends to snow in February. And if I wanted to add a glossary term, all I'd have to do is highlight the word, add a glossary term, and say second month of the year. That easily creates a glossary term for you. Let's say I wanted to now add a footnote. I just have to drop my cursor where it is, click on footnote, and I got a pop-up on my browser. You might not be able to see this because I'm not sharing, I'm only sharing my browser. And I'll say based on personal experience. So you can see that now I've added a glossary term and a footnote. These are just a couple of the features. You can do other things like add links, add tables. You can even add code if you'd like. So there's a lot of different options available to you. It's very easy to add an image. There's an add media button up here. And what I'm going to do is upload a file. This is a picture I took today. And I can insert this into my chapter. I won't go super in depth into it today, but if you want to add a caption or links underneath your image, you can do so. And to add in a YouTube video, it's about as simple as having a link. And once you paste it, it will automatically paste into the browser itself and it will start playing in the browser. So if you're a lecturer and you want to have a comprehensive book and you want to add a recorded lecture that you want to incorporate as a part of the chapter itself, then what you can do is upload your lecture onto YouTube and then link it directly into your book so that your students can watch your lecture while they're reading, which is highly engaging, and then perhaps include a H5P quiz afterwards. So all of that is available to you. And then upon saving, if I go to view my chapter, I have my glossary term, I have my footnote, I have my text that I've included, my image, my YouTube video. So all of this will be beautifully formatted. And something else that I wanted to say, like I said, nothing is final on Pressbooks. You can always go back on your revisions and I don't know why the revision tool isn't working right now, but normally when you click on browse, what you'd be able to do is toggle back and forth between the saves that you've made and see exactly what difference that see exactly what changes you've made. And what you can do in that case is if you liked your version from 3 weeks ago better, not only can you restore it back to then, you can also see exactly what you had written at the time. So that's a really convenient feature that you have. And then you might be thinking, if I don't like, you know, the way my typefaces look or the way the color of this text box looks, how would I be able to change that? And we have an appearance module, and you can change your theme whenever you want. So we have 21 different kinds of themes that you can activate. It won't change any of your content, but these are preset themes that you can change back and forth between. Some are excellent for textbook educational textbook purposes. Others are excellent for novels or monographs, and all of them you can see exactly how they look and experiment and test them out. That's one of the beauties about having Pressbooks. And there's also custom styles as well. If you are a CSS whiz and you'd like to add your own styling, those are all features that are available to you. So that is super convenient to have. And then when you're done with your book, you're more than welcome to go out into the world and export your book. This is where you would come to, like I said, export your beautifully formatted book into the readable formats or the other formats which are convenient for remixing and revising. We also have LTI connection available, which means that you'd be able to securely launch your book onto your LMS, and your students can try out HFP activities and read content directly from there, because I'm sure that instructors all feel this way, but nothing is more tough than trying to get 50 people to pigeonhole onto Pressbooks.com when they already have a million different platforms. So having that LMS feature is super convenient. So that's a very brief overview of what it's like to use Pressbooks and to write a book. We also have a import module. So let's say you have just found out about Pressbooks, but you're 2/3 done writing your textbook or course outline for the year, whatever you're writing for the semester or the year. What you can do is all of these following types of formats are available for import. So you can import your Word doc if you've been writing on Word and upload your file and start working on your book from here. Alternatively, we have an option called cloning. Cloning is a process in which you are able to get an exact copy of another Pressbooks book onto your network. So in my case, I have this really amazing book called OER Starter Kit. This is a book from Iowa State. It's a really cool book that I think everyone should incorporate into their OER practice. Lots of different information. And I cloned this book over from their network. So on their network, this book was CC-BY licensed. You can see it's on the Iowa State University network. And I wanted this book on my network. So I had cloned it over, and it's a super simple process to do so. I will show you after this demo if anyone is interested. And we also offer a Pressbooks directory, which is sort of an online library, if you will, containing 2,065 licensed books that have been published and are publicly available. You don't even have to have a Pressbooks network to access this. It's available for everybody so that they have access to the books that people have written and have published onto the universe across 93 Pressbooks networks, so 93 different institutions that use Pressbooks. And as long as they have the right license, so CC-BY, and amongst others, basically anything without an all rights reserved license, you can clone that onto your network as well so that you can have it as a part of your catalog. So that is a very quick overview of Pressbooks. I know that was a lot of information. Obviously, I work for Pressbooks, so to me, this made sense. But if you have any questions, I am more than happy to take any questions that you might have. And I hope that with Stephanie giving her presentation, I will stop sharing. And I hope that with Stephanie giving her presentation, I hope that it provides perspective into how all of these pieces I just showed you all fit together. And yeah, so I will stop here. I don't know if question period is now or if we should move on to Stephanie. What do you think, Debbie or Stephanie?
I think we should take some questions now with what you just showed.
Excellent.
Does anyone have any questions for Amy right now?
We don't have any questions in the chat yet. Just a couple of folks who have indicated that they're brand new to this and they're interested in the nuts and bolts of Pressbooks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. We have a bit of time allotted after Stephanie's presentation so that we can get everyone set up, either if you're a part of Maricopa or if you're a part of University of Arizona or Arizona State. I think both have Pressbooks networks. If any of you are part of any of those, we can help you get set up. If you don't have a Pressbooks network, I can get you started on our sandbox book. So if everyone wants to start indicating if you don't have a Pressbooks network, if you're not a part of those 3 institutions that I have just stated, if you want to share your email address, I can add you to the sandbox book while Stephanie's giving her presentation. But afterwards, once I have everyone set up, I'd be happy to take any questions and walk everyone who is new through all of these steps again. So for now, I will hand it off to Stephanie.
Okay, everyone. I just want to say for those of you that are new to Pressbooks, I was too. I basically learned about it at, imagine this, an OER meeting and thought, wow, this is fantastic. This is exactly what I want to do. I had no idea, completely new to OER. Everything was new. But if you can navigate Canvas, you can navigate a Pressbook. It is really, truly that simple. And as I was thinking here, what I would mention to you guys, I only have really a couple, like maybe 3 instances that cause a little hiccup with working in Pressbooks. So I'll go over those, but I just kind of wanted to share with you my project that I did. So let me just share my screen with you. All right, there it is. You can all see this. I'm going to blow it up a little bigger for you. There we go. Let's make my screen a little bigger. Let me know if you have trouble seeing it. I want to get it as big as I can. So this is my Nutrition Essentials book that I created for my 100 level course. And I wanted it to be more of almost look more like a consumer text than a textbook. I wanted it to be more friendly. So I played with the font. So thinking about the layout, initially I kind of am a pen and paper person and sketch out my ideas for what I wanted. And also I looked at a bunch of other textbooks and go, oh, I like this and I like that. And you can pick and choose from that. But one thing for my students in my book, again, this is a 100 level course, all the objectives, and Pressbooks already codes these little text boxes which add interest to your project. But I told my students that anything in blue is an activity that they're expected to do that complements what is written in the text. So instead of having pages and pages of text for them to read, because goodness knows we spend so much time online, I wanted them to have a little bit more I don't, just a different experience than just reading text. So again, just like Amy was saying, the videos, I put them in a highlighted box to let them know to do it. I have the H5Ps that I created for them to answer questions after they watch the video or the activity. I go through and I have a highlight for a glossary item or a definition for them. I send them out to other things they need to do. But again, overall, the process was really quite easy. And I think the main thing is not only can you just create this as quickly as you saw Amy do it from the start, but you can also get students to do that. So not only did I create a book, but I also have created projects to work with my students to get them to sign in to Pressbooks with an account. I created another book for them to contribute to topics, nutrition topics within that text. And they sign up for the topics and they actually write. They create the boxes, they add the videos, and they create these H5Ps, which we'll learn more about later today in other presentations, I believe. But they were able to follow the tutorials provided in Pressbook. I also had a video of how to sign into Pressbook, and that was a little bit of a hiccup there. The other thing I've noticed too for the book is the only little hiccup I have found is that sometimes the word wrapping, if you insert a video or something, it can cause you can't move it around as with much space as you would like. So that's one little hookup. And of course the sign up for the students, because they in our system, they have to receive the invitation. So that's a second hiccup I have found with the system. And then the third thing is when I tell my students to find graphics, they have a really tough time with OER licensing. So that's the other issue. So really those are my only issues that came to mind when I wanted to talk to you about my perspective from using Pressbooks for the first time, not knowing anything and creating a whole book. Now I created this book over the summer. And but again, just like Amy mentioned, those revisions and going back over them over and over again, it is really helpful. And you won't lose anything. You don't have to worry about your students losing anything or deleting anything. And it's easy to add them to it. So it's been a real joy, and I'm happy to have this book available to them because their textbooks was about $100. But I think it's been beneficial to them. And every time I hear Amy or somebody else talk, I'm like, oh, I need to do this or that, or I need to add that in. So it's like an ongoing process. It just never ends. You're just like, oh, I want to create more and make it better. So it's a lot of fun to tinker with. And again, it's very simple for you to use. As I said, if you use Canvas, you can use the book. And I think that's really all I wanted to share with you at this time, that I just encourage you to go in there and use it and work with your administrative person who's in charge of the Pressbook within your campus. And you can get started on it, and you could start, as simply as just having a instead of doing a full-blown book, you could start in parts by chapters to add those into your Canvas courses. All right, does anyone have any questions for me?
I have a couple that were sent to me, and one of them is it difficult for students to understand how to log in and edit the book?
It is not. Thank you for that question. It is not. It's very simple, and I'm going to stop sharing now, and I can go back. I created a video, a screen capture for my students, saying that the key thing is they have to log in with their student ID. You can't just use your Gmail account ID, and that was the most confusing part for them. And then accepting the invitation, so you have a few people that missed that invite from Pressbooks to be added to the book. So once they do that, then the book populates and they can see their book in there. So at first it could be a little confusing, and you're always going to have a few, but it really was not a problem. What else?
And they probably have to sign up for their own accounts, or can they log in with their Maricopa?
They log in, they have to sign up for an account, an invitation will be sent, and then they have to respond to that invitation, and then they'll be able to get in and see the books at that point.
I can also hop in and say that it depends on your network. So for example, on Maricopa, they have, you can either sign up for an account you can sign up manually through the Pressbooks login module as long as you have a Maricopa compatible address, or you can log in using SSO. So you can log in, and by SSO, I mean, it'll take you directly. So here, let me share my screen. So for Maricopa, you can either log in if you already have your student ID here, or you can log in through Maricopa Community Colleges. So this is really convenient for anyone at Maricopa, because you can see there's no register button otherwise. So this ensures that only those with valid Maricopa IDs can create login accounts here. If they have passwords, they're more than welcome to, after having created their accounts, they're more than welcome to log in manually, but you can also log in still using your MEID. But it depends on the network. So for example, Josie, if Pima Community College were to get their own Pressbooks network, you can either decide for yourself whether you'd want manual registration or you'd want to set up SSO. So, and by SSO, I mean by single sign-on, which means to go to your institution's login network and then be rerouted to Pressbooks. So it really depends, and there's a lot of flexibility that you have when you have a Pressbooks network. And like Stephanie said, it shouldn't be super, obviously I'm not an instructor, and it's nice to have an instructor attest to the fact that it's been easy for her to get her students to sign on, but also it's convenient because there is a users module on the book. So for example, on the test book that I had created, there's a user module on the left-hand side, and I can invite 40 of my students in one list so that I don't have to manually add them one at a time. There's a bulk add list. And when I add all of my students, regardless of whether or not they've logged into Pressbooks, they will receive an invitation for that book in their email address that you've input. So they'll receive an invitation in their inbox, at which point they can click that link and either register, or they'll be added to the book if they've logged in before, and they'll have access to that book. So it's really easy to add everyone and to have everyone get started. Even if there's a learning curve on using Pressbooks itself, gaining access to the book is never the issue.
Right, and I just want to follow up on a couple of questions I saw on the chat there about the 3 hiccups. The 3 hiccups was just what we were talking about, getting them signed in. You're going to have a few that are going to miss that invitation in their email. The second thing was the pictures, graphics, and word wrapping was the issue. And then the third thing was teaching students what are appropriate graphics to use in a Pressbook, OER Pressbook. And then I want to comment on one other question I saw in the chat, and then I want Amy to follow up. I would like her to follow up. But comparing Pressbook to Canvas, yes, you can do all these things in Canvas, but when your course closes, and some people close their courses, the students can't access that information. This Pressbook can go on with people in other majors who may be taking your class. Like for instance, I had a physician assistant, or his degree will be a physician assistant, taking my course this last semester, and he was so happy to be able to have this book as a reference that he could refer to indefinitely. So that's the benefit, that it's right there. They don't have to log into Canvas, don't have to, just they can always have it, and they can print it out too, right? And it'll be updated on an ongoing basis because, as Amy covered, how easy it is to continue to revise and improve. And Amy?
Yeah, and yes, yeah, I'd love to add on to that. So thank you for that invitation. And yeah, I definitely agree with Stephanie, and I also want to draw the point, so to speak, that Canvas is not a book publishing platform. Canvas is a learning management system. So it's only accessible, as Stephanie is saying, to really drive that point home, that Canvas was not made as a platform to host books or to write books in. It's for instructors to have catered material to that cohort of students for that class. So whereas Pressbooks, your book does really live on forever. So if Stephanie's student, this physician's assistant, wants to refer to the material that they've learned with Stephanie, then they're always able to refer to it, so long as Stephanie, as the administrator of that book, decides to keep it public. If for whatever reason she wants to take it down, she as the author has the right to pull the book or to make it private. But so long as she doesn't decide to do that, and I hope she doesn't, because this is a great book, this book will live on in the internet forever without being designated to any particular audience, and can live on, sort of. And I've been asked a couple of questions in the chat. Someone sent me a private question in the chat which says, do you have to publish the book before they have access? So that's a great question. Privacy settings on Pressbooks is great but complicated. Great because there's a lot of levels, but that also sort of makes it complicated. The book can be either public or private. So public means that that book is available for everybody. So for example, my test book here was called OER Starter Kit. So I'm gonna have to share again just to make it clear for everybody. So here, this book is public. This book on Iowa State is public because any of you can navigate to this book, and this book will be accessible to you. If, let's say, Abby Elder, who wrote this book, decided to make this book private, then none of you would have access to this book. So in terms of the question of whether or not do you have to publish the book before they have access, it's up to you. So if you decide to keep your book private and you're working on it with your students, you can do so, and you'd have to add them as a user onto the book so that they have access to a private book. But if you want to keep your book public, then anyone will have access to that book. So it's up to you. You don't have to publish the book before they have access. So yeah, it's I don't know if that made sense. If you have any follow-up questions regarding that, you please feel free to ask in the chat. And Janice asks, is there a way to make books visible to the public? Yes, so if you set your book to public, your book will be available to everybody. If you set your book to private, then it will be available to nobody except for the people that you have added as users onto their book. So let's say Stephanie decided to today make her book private. That means that only her and the people who have worked on the book will have access to that book. None of you will. But if it's public, then all of you have access to it. And yes, exactly as Josie said, you can easily toggle between public and private, and you can always change that. So for example, in that directory, there were about 2,100 books. That number is constantly changing because some people decide, oh, this book is no longer relevant to, like, I don't want this book on the directory anymore. They'll just set it to private and the book will automatically be pulled from the directory. And let's say tomorrow they decide, actually, I would like this book to be publicly available to everybody. They can set the book to public and now it'll be available to everyone again.
Yeah, I kept my book
Yes.
private while I was writing it over the doing the initial writing, and then waited till I was able to comb through it before I made it public. And again, I still find things you think you covered. So it's like ongoing process of, just you keep looking at it and you find things you need to tweak and alter. That's just the nature of the project.
Yes, absolutely. And to follow up on Janice's question in the chat, in terms of I got lost in why students need to sign on to Pressbooks, but it sounds like they need to sign in if they are going to edit a Pressbooks. Yes, exactly. So a lot of people choose to, some networks even don't have registration open to students because depending on the organization, they decide how they're going to use Pressbooks, how OER will be implemented. And for some institutions, it's to primarily focus on faculty writing, which allow faculty to publish open textbooks that are freely available to students. Whereas in Stephanie's case, and a lot of Maricopa's case, students can openly sign up, they can create their own books, or in some cases, like Stephanie's, they've been led to Pressbooks because their professor wants them to collaboratively work on them, on the project, on Pressbooks. So you're not limited to any sort, there's so many ways that you can create a Pressbooks book, but you don't necessarily need to add your students to the book if you are only writing the book. So I feel like that was a mouthful, but.
And I just want to share one other thing too, is that with my book, now that I have it, and it's not even a year old yet, I've already been collaborating with our dental faculty on campus to talk about how we can get their students to contribute topics into my nutrition book that focus on dental health. So we'll be adding that in. So it's just a great tool to collaborate, because you have something that lives on, and the students really enjoy that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll also echo that. There was a faculty this year who did a huge undertaking of a project and had 100 students join her book, and everyone wrote a chapter, and it was just a collaborative process. She vetted all the content, and they published only the chapters that they wanted to. So like I said, there's a lot of different privacy settings as well. So you can have your book set to public. Stephanie, I don't know if you did this, but you can have your whole book set to public, but if you have a couple of draft chapters that you want to have live in the book, but you don't want to have it published, if you have 20 chapters, you can choose to publish the first 16 and not the last 4. So there's a lot of different layers of privacy as well. And then there's a question in the chat that says, can the public edit it as well? And no, the public cannot edit the book just because your book is public. When the book is public, it just means that it's publicly available for people to read, not to edit. They will have to be added as a user on the book in order to edit the book. So Josie would not be able to edit Stephanie's book, even though Stephanie's book is public. None of you would be able to edit Stephanie's book, even though you can view it, right? And there's another question. If I wanted to write an OER textbook with H5P quizzes and activities that I wanted scored and grades captured, then I would embed the chapter into specific modules on my Canvas LTI, and then yes. Okay, so that's a great question. We at Pressbooks have a special feature called Results for LMS that is new. And if you were to have an LTI connection and the Results for LMS feature, then yes, upon securely launching your book with H5P activities into Canvas or Moodle or Desire to Learn, Brightspace, or Blackboard, all 4 of those support LMSs, and you had Results for LMS, then when your students take the quiz as logged in users on your LMS, then their grades would be recorded and it would go in the gradebook. So it's a great tool to have if you want to use it as an assessment tool. But let's say, Stephanie, I don't know if you do, Stephanie, but if you have H5P activities on your book, if students were to take the quizzes on the Pressbooks book itself, like on the Pressbooks platform, the grades will not be captured. At Pressbooks, we really value, oh, amazing. I love this. I love how interactive it is. I love the diagram too. But otherwise, grades are not captured on Pressbooks itself. And that's because we really value privacy, and we know a lot of institutions do as well. So we actually don't collect any user information unless you were to have the specific feature that exists separately.
Yeah, so I just want to add to what Amy was saying. So here's an example. How do we get these grades if you don't have that add-on feature that Amy was just mentioning? But as we check, let's put this over here and let's let it do a check for us here. But a lot of times students can keep a log to record their scores that they did it for the points. They could take a screenshot of it and upload that to Canvas. So there are workarounds if you don't have that option available to you. So just another thought. All right, are there any other questions that we need to answer?
I'm not aware of any additional questions that we missed. Does anyone else here have a question for Amy or Stephanie? A follow-up question from Christina?
I'll just unmute myself. So if it's OER and it's on the Pressbooks site, can someone take that book and reuse it, and only if you allow them to?
Yeah, so only if you allow them to. So that is dependent by your that is dependent on your license setting. So, and you can set those licenses yourself. There's no way to ban someone from taking your content. So for example, if you set your book to all rights reserved and some person comes and copies and pastes all of your text, there's no way to, there's no way to find this person and tell them, why did you do this? But there's no way to do that on the internet anyways. But in terms of, you can make your book as shareable as you want. So for example, if you set your book to CC BY and it lives on Pressbooks, there's a chance that someone might clone your book and have a copy of your book on their network. Or if you have the download feature available, like I showed you on the webbook, they will, and if you make the XML version available, then they can download that XML, upload it onto wherever they want, and have that text freely available to other people. So those are some of the sharing settings that you can have. And depending on how you set your sharing settings, you can have it as open as possible, or you can have it as closed off as possible. So if you want to set your book to all rights reserved because you don't want anyone remixing and revising your book, then you can set it to that so that it doesn't happen. So
is there the potential for possibly a student to get a hold of the book and get all the answers from those quizzes if I'm going to have it integrated into Canvas as a scored activity?
Yes, there is. If you're talking about the potential for cheating, there is. But it's more of a it's more for practice than I would say otherwise. Also, you can have your book set to, so for example, if you want to have your book live on Canvas and only on Canvas because you don't want your students having access to this public book and coming and finding all the answers and then doing the quizzes on your LMS, you can securely launch private content as well. So what you can do is not share the book with your students, set the book to private so that it's only accessible by you. You can launch that content onto Canvas. And your students, the only way that they can access that book and the content of the book will be on Canvas. Does that help answer your question? Yes, okay, sounds great. And there's another question, is the cloning like copying the book? And is there something like copyrights involved in Pressbooks? Yes, so yes, we take these things very seriously. A lot of you, I'm sure, are librarians or already familiar with the open space, but copyrights and attributions are such a big part of the OER community. You can set licenses on your book. You can set licenses even on your chapters. And those are some of the parameters of licensing that you can have on your book. But yes, so that is the part that answer is regarding copyrights in particular. But to answer your first question, is cloning like copying the book? Yes, so cloning is like copying the book. Cloning will essentially create an exact copy of a book that you see somewhere else. So if Stephanie's book was CC BY licensed and it was open and accessible, I can clone her book from Open Mods Press, Maricopa, to my network at Pressbooks. Our organizational company, Pressbooks Network. I'd be able to clone, or if Arizona State wanted to clone Stephanie's book onto Arizona State's university network, they can do that as well. But the thing with cloning is that it creates an exact copy of the book. So you can only do that from another Pressbooks book. So if you see a book on OpenStax, you won't be able to clone that book from OpenStax because we are two different platforms. And we can't technically read all the data, like the technical data of all of the structural part of that book onto our network. But any book in the Pressbooks world, as long as they don't have an all rights reserved license, that book can be brought over as its own entire copy onto my network. So that is cloning. let's say you did find a book on OpenStax, or like I had mentioned earlier, you are an instructor and you've written 2/3 of your book on Microsoft Word. As long as it fits its import compatible format, which is on our guide, there's like you can upload a EPUB, or you can upload an XML file, or you can upload an OpenOffice file or a Microsoft Word file. If it comes in any of those formats, then you'd be able to import that content into an existing book. So there's a variety of ways that you can bring in content, but the limitation to that is that it would have to be properly licensed. So you can't clone over or import all rights reserved content, because that would not be ethical. So that is, I hope.
I have a quick question. I think I wrote it in the chat. Why does anyone clone a book when it is available for reading publicly? I mean, anyone can access it anytime. So what could be the intention for cloning?
Yeah, that's a great question, and we get it all the time. Stephanie, if you have an answer to that, I would definitely recommend you chime in.
I do.
Yeah, go for it. I'll let you go for it, actually.
So as I was working on my book, I found that there wasn't, I could find higher level books with too much information, but I couldn't find a book for a 100 level course. So that was the issue. So therefore you could clone the higher level book, and then you could go back and delete out chapters you didn't want to use and alter what was written to simplify it, depending on which level your students were at. So that's the benefit I see from my perspective. And Amy, I don't know what else, do you have any other thoughts to add to that?
That's a great answer. I love that answer. And I love it because it really embodies the power of OER, in my opinion. So I will say that is probably the main reason. And that is a great question. It's one that we get a lot, because you might, if it's available on another network, why would you want to clone it over? But it's convenient to have on your network and your network's catalog, because it increases the visibility of that book for your students. So I find that people will gravitate more towards their own catalog than they would to someone else's catalog. And having it on your network makes it so that whoever goes to your institution has higher engagement with it. And then the second reason is for the one that Stephanie stated, because that cloned book doesn't have to live as it's a pristine copy of the original or its originator. It's free as long as the license permits you to do so. So for example, if there's a CC BY license, then it allows you to remix and revise and adapt the book however you want. So if you decide to clone this whole book over, and in 6 months you only have one chapter from that initial book, that's okay. But at least you got to filter that information out and decide for yourself, right? So there's a lot of different possibilities.
And the other thing I want to add to that too, thinking about with my students, when I chose graphics, I wanted to choose graphics that looked like them. We're a Hispanic serving institution, so I've tried to make the textbook focus more on photos that are relatable to them, instead of having stock photos that they can't relate to as well, just to make it more user friendly.
I think it might be time to go into our sandbox work play session. Does that sound good? And that might address some of the additional questions that people might have as we actually go into the sandbox or your respective sandboxes and do a little bit of play. Are we ready for that?
I think so. It doesn't look like there are any other questions from the chat.
Okay, well, I'm going to add I was notified that one person would like to be added to the sandbox that Amy created for this workshop. And so I'm guessing that everyone else has access to a Pressbooks so that you can edit. And if not, please go ahead and type your email into the chat and I can go ahead and add you to the sandbox.
Josie, are you adding them?
I'm adding, yes, one at a time. So I have two more to add.
Excellent. I will leave it up to you. Thank you.
Also, if there's anything anyone wants particular help with as we're in the sandbox, like if you want to create something, we're here to help you do that as well and guide you through the process to show you just how easy it can be to do it.
So Debbie, for those who already have access to Maricopa Open Digital Pressbooks, would you like them to be added to the sandbox too, just for today's session, and then they might work on getting the affiliated with the Maricopa access?
Whatever is easiest for you folks, right? If somebody is on the call here and they are affiliated with Maricopa Community Colleges, faculty, staff, or students, you have an MEID, and with an MEID, you can log in to Maricopa Open Digital Press directly. However, if it is easiest to put folks into the Pressbooks sandbox today, that is absolutely fine by me.
I think that makes the most sense that way. Even the Maricopa folks won't have to create a space to work in.
That's fine.
Well, I've added everybody, so those whom I've added will see an email if you go to your email, and you'll see an invitation.
Excellent, thank you.
You're welcome. And if you do not by chance see an invitation in your email inbox, please be sure to let us know.
And then Laura and Asmita and anybody else from Maricopa who wants to get started with Maricopa Open Digital Press, we will follow up with you next week with some different ways that some information about how to get started. Okay.
Josie, I am not in the sandbox with
Stephanie,
you guys.
I will add you
Okay.
to the
Okay, I see Christine and Michael, and I will add you momentarily. And I see John, so I'll go ahead and add John. So Michael, you've now been added.
Thank you, Josie.
You're welcome.
Okay, Amy and Stephanie and everybody, I'm going to leave this in your eminently capable hands and go resolve an issue happening in one of the other breakouts. So thank you so much. Again, anybody with Maricopa who needs help after this call, please just reach out. And we have a great deal of training set up for you in the spring. So thank you. If I can, I'll come back.
And John, you should now have an invitation in your email inbox. And I believe I've gotten everybody. And I see people populating the users list as authors, which is great. I see Marsha's in there, Michael, Deidre. So would Amy or Stephanie, would you like to give people some orientation, or should we go into breakout groups? What would we do? Have fairly large amount of people here. Maybe we
So
could
we
have
just click
for
on the
5.
link you emailed, right? We are supposed to just click on the link that got emailed, correct?
That's correct.
Do we do anything after that, or I don't
You should have access to the book, which you can enter once you gain access to.
so like say read, and then that's how we enter it.
I'm not 100% sure what you're talking about. You can, if you're on the book itself, you can go into the admin panel. Let me sure.
Did you get both of your, you have to log in with your username that was provided and the password, and then you'll be in, that's the public screen that Amy's showing now. And then you have to click on the.
Yes, I am seeing this screen on my computer.
Then you can, if once you've created your account, go into admin and you'll be led to this panel back.
So how, that's exactly probably my question, as in how do I create that account, I guess?
Your account will be created when you register using the email address that's using the link in your email.
Okay.
Amy, does it make sense for folks to just, when they get to the screen that we're seeing on your shared screen, to click on the admin link at the top?
Yep, exactly.
The sign in, you mean? The sign in on the top?
No. So did you click on the link that's in your email and you've been led here?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see.
So I guess I don't know what to do once I see the screen that you just showed.
So if you're logged in, you should see, you need to log in using the email, the password that you've set through the login. So when you click on the link in your email that you received, it'll say, would you like to set up,
it never asked me. I see.
It will ask you to reset your password. And once you reset your password, you should be able to log into your book.
Huh. I guess I'll just wait for you guys to direct, because when I click on the link, I directly see this black screen with this whatever is shown. It's not asking me any questions. Or
do you not see the red admin button there next to the left of the sign out on the tab there where Amy's pointing?
Exactly, that's what I'm saying. I don't see that.
So it sounds to me that you haven't reset your password to log in to actually physically sign in. You just got the invitation, but you haven't created you haven't used your username that they.
So I see. So I should
go back to your email. Go back to your email and look for that username. That's like just my first name. And then I had to reset my password in order to log into this book.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
And then you'll be able to see that admin button pop up there for you.
So for anyone who wants to get started, if you go into admin, as I had just shown you next to the sign out button, you'll be led to the back end of your book. So let's say that, just to draw the examples back together, if you're an instructor and you're working on your book and your students wanted access to if you're writing your book with your students, this is sort of what the workflow would look like in this case. In this interesting example, if myself, Josie, and Stephanie were the instructors, we've just added all of you. So it's that easy to gain access to the back end of the book. And this is where you begin writing your book. So on the left-hand side, you can also see who the users are. So all of you have been added. You can see all the chapters that are being written. So to get started, what you would do is go on to Organize. And you can create a chapter just by clicking Add Chapter. You can add your own title and you can start playing around. So I think we had a list of things that we were going to suggest as exercises, but I just wanted to show you that this is where you get started. And you can title it whatever you want. I would say title it your name for now so that you know exactly which is your chapter, so you can start playing around in it. You can test out the different tools up here, but that is how you create the chapter itself. Did one of you, Josie or Stephanie, want to provide some of the other instructions, or should we just let everyone enjoy themselves on the platform?
Well, the first one is the first two. I'll go through the first two. The first one is the best way to add text to a blank page. And the second is how to enhance the look of your text. So two focused on text specifically. There's also one about colored text boxes as well.
Yeah, so to write text, it's just as simple as writing in here. Just think of it as any other document that you've ever worked on before. And in terms of the text itself, what you see is what you get. And to embellish your texts, you have the bold and italic. A lot of the common formatting tools are up here. There's a special characters module as well if you'd like to, if you are a language instructor and you'd like to explore some of the options available on there. If you're a language instructor and you are not using like the Latin alphabet, don't worry, there is a separate setting for your book that you can change. So for example, just to draw a really easy example, I'm Korean. So if I wanted to write my book in Korean, it uses a completely different character system. I can declare Korean for language and script support so that when I type in Korean and I export my book, it will be beautifully formatted. So for the purposes of this demo, I won't show you how to do that, but that is also possible. If you want special characters using the Latin alphabet, they are all here. You can play around with the tools. You can also test out the footnote and glossary as well. To add a glossary term, you have to highlight the word and then add the term. For footnote, you don't have to highlight anything. Drop your cursor where you want your, drop your cursor where you want the footnote to go, and it will automatically insert a footnote for you. So glossary, highlight, footnote, drop your cursor.
Amy, will you please show the drop down on the paragraph there? So that's important when you do your headings. So instead of bolding and changing the font size, you use these ready-made headings that are already pre-formatted for you, or you can create your own.
Yes, that's a very good point. I'm surprised I missed the most important thing. But yes, headings are very important, and they're listed for you sequentially so that you can use them. And yeah, and then the last thing I wanted to say, which is the last thing that Josie had mentioned, are text boxes. So there's many different kinds of text boxes that you can test out. They all come in different colors. And the sidebar indicates to a text box on the side rather than taking up the entire width of the page. So,
and also, if you don't like any of the colors of the pre-existing ones, then you also can make your custom colors. I found it was just easier just to go with what was already in the system for me, right? You have so many to choose from. So that, like I said, it'll fill the whole screen like you saw in my book with the big green learning objectives, or, you know, you could put it to the side if you wanted a smaller little side note.
Yeah, exactly. Great. So it looks like everyone's created their own chapters. And yeah, let us know if you have any questions while you're
and if you want us to pop in, we can pop into your chapter if you want, and help you with something if you want. Otherwise, enjoy playing in there and just, like I said, just enjoy it. Command Z, if you put something somewhere, like one thing I found when I'm placing videos in there, then sometimes in those colored text box, it'll interfere with the code based on where I have my cursor positioned, and it will delete it or delete part of it. And then so I'll use the Command Z to undo it and to move my cursor and do it again.
Also, these books will be available for the next 2 weeks starting today. After the 2 weeks, the book will be deleted. So, so that is what's happening. So you won't, this is not the end of your Pressbooks journey. You have 2 weeks to see how you like it, to see what you can do. If you have any questions, you can send me an email and I'd be happy to help you. If you're interested in Pressbooks, you can also email me and we can, oh, I sent that to one person only, but here we go.
So real quick, if we create something and we want to not like undo the thing, is that similar to the word that we do, like undo?
Yes, there's no specific undo button, but I think it was highlighted up here. Command Z is your favorite button. It's your best friend. So
that's right. So if you just did something and that's your magic undo button, just hit Command Z and it'll undo it and it'll keep going back to all of it, really, I think.
Yes, and if you are on a PC and not a Mac, that would be Control Z.
Yes,
Very Canadian.
yes, Control Z. Yes, that's what I meant to say, Control Z. Yes, so I am on a Mac. The other thing too I wanted to mention is, let's say you've created this, you're in the sample chapter, you can, and even in your own Pressbook, you can copy everything and paste it over there too, in between into new pages and different pages or different books or different windows that you have open for different chapters. And folks, feel free to just go ahead and unmute yourself and ask us any questions as you're working. And then we can also view your screen while you're in there and answer any questions that you may have.
I have a question. Just in general, what is the work habit or your best practice on doing the chapter metadata? Do you often leave that blank, or do you find yourself finding that helpful down the road?
So far, I've primarily left it blank in my book, but again, like I said, it's not a year old yet, so it's still working on it and updating it each time I go in there. Amy, do you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, so chapter metadata can be set, but I skipped this part of the session because it's tedious and boring sort of part of it, like the book information. Although I'm sure some librarians would disagree because it is I think they feel it passionately. But all to say, metadata can be set for the book and for the chapter, and I find that people tend to not necessarily set the metadata for the chapters, but they will set it for the book. And they will set it before publication to increase the searchability of their book. Because even though it's tedious, it definitely increases the searchability and accessibility of the book. And but yeah, I would say people don't really set the chapter metadata unless they've brought in the content from elsewhere, or if they're writing with a lot of different people and each person has written their own chapter, then they would include the metadata. Then whoever's written the chapter can add themselves as an author and can set the metadata for that chapter itself. But I would say for most books that are written on Pressbooks, people tend to just set the metadata for the entire book. I don't know if I went too deeply into your question there, but that is what I would say about chapter metadata.
No, that makes sense. Just the strategy of the metadata, so that you don't, so folks don't feel bogged down by feeling required to do chapter metadata, and they can focus on the content for their students.
Yeah, so absolutely. I would definitely agree with that. I think chapter metadata is tedious if you find that your book metadata sort of is already a comprehensive overview on if there's no point in listing, if your book is all rights reserved, there's no point in setting all of your chapters to all rights reserved too, right? That, like you said, that is a big tedious expenditure of time. So
Amy, can you share your screen? There was a question about the metadata. Just show that page of where that information is, so that people could see what we're talking about.
Was the question what is metadata, or is it where is what is metadata is metadata is information about the book itself that doesn't include the content. That is like my non-librarian way of saying metadata. I'm sure other people in this call could explain better what metadata is in more technical terms, but metadata, so for all of you who are working on this exercise right now, you won't be able to see this because you're not the administrator of this book, but when you're an administrator, you can set greater parts of other books. So for example, as an editor, you can't set the book title, but this book information module below organize is where you can see all the information, where you can see and change the information about the book. So metadata includes things like publication date and language and subject, and information about the book itself that helps categorize the book. Michael, feel free to correct me if I am not being completely accurate, but this is where you would set this information and you can change that at any point. And if I actually go to show you a completely populated book, here, I'll go into another book this time.
No, the way you said that makes sense. I think of it as the old card catalog information. When you would pull the card out of the old school card catalog, you're not reading the book, you're just reading the details about the book.
That's a really good way to put it. So This is where all the book information stuff that I just showed you on that interface is all populated. So you can see the book title and who's edited the book and the book description, as well as all of the book information and metadata information down here. So that includes the license, the publication date, as I had said, all the contributor roles that are available, and some of the other components of the book, which aren't metadata, but are pieces of the book that is necessary for the book's identification. So all of this is important, and all of this is included across all different formats. So whether it's a PDF, this will be included at the beginning of the PDF or the beginning of the ebook. So yeah.
I have a question. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you well.
Great. Actually, 3 questions, and they're probably really easy. The first question is, I went crazy on just creating text, the boxes, because I thought they were pretty cool, what Stephanie did. How do you, if you're past that point and you can't use Control-Z anymore, how do you get rid of a box?
That's exactly what my question was.
You're just going to back up, use your backspace key, or use your delete. I'm on a Mac. I use my delete key and backspace and then just delete it.
I tried that. I clicked on a box and then hit my delete key, and it just deletes the text. But then if I still...
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut
that might have done it. Okay, so you have to delete all the text in the box, and then it'll delete the box.
Yeah.
There's hidden code in there. You've got to get to that hidden code that's in the box to get it to delete.
Great.
So
and how
here,
about Oh, go ahead.
I just wanted to share really quickly that let's say you're here and for some reason your box isn't deleting. If you go into the text, you just have to delete the box itself. So you just have to delete the div, because it's the code for the text box itself, and the text box will delete. So that's
the other thing I want to add, you see where she positioned that text box? I like to give myself a little bit of space, white space above the text box. So that way, when you're trying to make it easier for you to get in there or add another line, sometimes it'll interfere with the text box, and you'll get that tiny little box when you really wanted the big box because you deleted part of the box, but you're not looking at the code, so you don't notice it. So, yeah.
Great idea. So two other questions, and that is there an easy way to move a box around?
I'm not on mute. No, there isn't, unfortunately. So what you can do is you can copy and paste the box, but the text box themselves are not movable because they're not an image. With images, like let's say on Microsoft Word, you can drag images around. That is not the same as the way that it works on here, because text boxes are, I don't want to get too technical, but they are HTML elements. So you can't just drag them and move them like you would an image.
Right. Okay.
Hence the extra white space that I was mentioning to give you a little bit of a buffer to work with.
Exactly. And then the last question is, which one of these menu items would you use if you had some 5GL?
I'm sorry?
5GL? I'm not there yet, but if I had, some 5GL that I wanted to use, like after a video, like Stephanie did.
H5P.
Oh, H5P.
I'm sorry. Sorry about that.
That's okay. That's all right. Yeah, we can show you.
Yeah,
I can show you. Let me pull up my screen and you can look at that. Where's my Pressbook? Let me find my Pressbook here. Let's pull it back up here. And then let me share my screen and I can show you that all, the H5P, so you can see where that is in my book. Okay, so let me go back here in my book. Let me go into my admin. Okay, we're at digestion. Where'd it go? Oh, here we go. Okay, so you can see it showing up here is this H5P code. So you could actually just copy this little code and reproduce that H5P image I saw, but everything lives to to create brand new, like say you wanted to create that from scratch, you would have to go into here and say add new. So it's in a separate location. And then you have to, I mean, so many options, so awesome that you can create all these things. Just this morning, I was making some flashcards for a chapter in the book. It's just ongoing. There, you can create flashcards. You would download it. And then I'm surprised it doesn't. Here's one I already have. Mark the words, find the hotspots, drag the words. Here, let's click on this one. And I'll just show you. So it shows you how to do a demo on it, which is, that's how my students learned to create the true false questions and everything. And they did do some drag and drop words. So you can do that. Or you can say you want to use it and give it a name, and it'll walk you through it and help you fill it out. So it's that simple. And then once you finish doing this, then you hit create, it creates it, and then it'll put it in your library. So let me go in here. I'm sorry, go back to my chapter here. Let's go into this one. Once you've added that or created that in your library, then you can go up here where it says add 5P, and it'll pull up everything you have in your system. Also, if you find a typo in one of your activities, you can go in here and click on it and you can edit it. It'll let you insert it, or you can also edit it. So it's great to go in here and just make sure you title them appropriately so that you can find them later.
Fantastic. So on your left menu, where do you go first? The media?
Yes. So I'll actually show you.
Okay. I'm gonna stop sharing.
Just because it was already done on Stephanie's book, this is like a little bit of a caveat. So I think you're seeing my screen. On the left-hand side, so like I said, this is one of those things that are only enabled because we're the admins of this book. So we have to activate the plugin. And once I activate the plugin, now you'll be able to see it. So if you want to refresh your page, you should have access to it. And John, if I may ask, what institution are you at?
Maricopa.
Oh, okay, so you're already at Maricopa. So let's say you decide to create a book. If you create a book, you can always go and turn it on. Yeah, if you decide to create a book, you will have to go and turn it on because H5P is not turned on by default. So it's turned off by default. So you'll always have to go into the plugins menu and activate it yourself. So when Stephanie started her book, she definitely went in and did this herself. And now you'd be able to click on add new. If you find, because you're at Maricopa, if you find that you don't have as much access, because like I said, we've assigned you all editor rules for this book. If you would like to explore more administrative settings, let's say if you wanted to create your own book for your class, or as an instructor you wanted to start a textbook and you want to explore other administrative related settings, then I would recommend you play around, create your own book on Maricopa and play around, and you can definitely find more information.
Great, thank you, everybody.
I have a quick question. Whenever we create something there, is it like, in Google Documents, it automatically gets saved? Does it get saved automatically, or you have to, like I just refreshed and whatever I had done has gone away?
So it doesn't save as quickly as Google Docs. There is an autosave function that works, but I would not recommend that you rely on it. So I would save as much as possible.
Okay. So
if you were to navigate away, there is a chance that it might autosave, but like I said, it's not a tool that was meant to be used in that way. You're supposed to save. So
the save is like at the bottom. Where do I find the save?
It's on the
upper
right-hand
right.
side.
Ah, yes. Thank you.
No worries. So we are heading to, and something I want to point out is that Michael has linked to the H5P workshop on the right-hand side in the chat. The person who's giving the talk is Alan Levine, I believe, from OpenBC. OpenBC, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think, okay. Open Campus BC is a consortium in Canada in the province of British Columbia. They have lots of institutions that work with them, and they have a very, very developed Pressbooks program. And they're open source users, so we don't actually, they're not clients of ours, but they use the Pressbooks platform for their own purposes. And they've done a lot of really cool things with H5P. So I would really recommend that you attend, so that if you ever decide to use Pressbooks, or if you're already on Pressbooks and you'd like to use H5P in your book, you can. Your book can look as beautiful as Stephanie's, is really what I want to say. And I know we only have about 3.5 minutes left, I would say roughly. If you're interested in Pressbooks, if your institution doesn't have Pressbooks and you don't have funding for it, we have a faculty license option available. I'm not trying to sell you on anything. There's no obligation. I just want to make this information available to you. If you're interested, there is a individual faculty license, so that you can individually purchase to have access to one educational licensed textbook. And you can get in contact with me if you're interested in that, and you know that your institution isn't at a position to purchase an entire network. Otherwise, there's someone from Salt Lake Community College here. Salt Lake Community College has their own Pressbooks network, and a lot of South Mountain, I believe, I forgot the name of the institution. South Mountain Community College. You have access to Maricopa. So I would really recommend, if you don't know if your institution has a Pressbooks network, to look up your institution name and then add in Pressbooks, because sometimes you might be surprised that your institution has invested into an OER platform. And also, if you're interested in coming to a further session to find out more about Pressbooks, I give webinars 3 times a month that provide perspective and into how to use Pressbooks. That's on our website. I will insert the link here. And it's free to everyone in the Pressbooks community, anyone who is either already on a Pressbooks EDU network or are interested in having a Pressbooks EDU network. You can come to find out how there are 2 90-minute sessions and then a separate session for the administrators of the network. But in those 2 90-minute sessions, I really go into depth on how you can have access to and how you can use all of these features and more. So like I said, I'm not trying to brand or advertise Pressbooks as much as letting you know that these are all the features that are available to you. And if you're interested, you can come to these webinars and ask me questions. And yeah, I hope this was helpful. Thank you so much to Josie and Stephanie and Michael. I am not the host, so I will let Michael say the closing piece, or Stephanie or Josie.
I can wrap this up, but I want to say thank you both, or thank you to Amy, Stephanie, and Josie so much for facilitating this. The hour and a half went way faster than it really felt like. And I will put a link to the remaining sessions in the chat. And I hope that you all have a wonderful day, and take care, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.